Hi everyone, I'm Ronan and Shane. I'm here with a new Star Wars video that is more of like bringing updates from something that I've been highly anticipating, which is the new Maul Shadow Lord animated series. It's coming out on April 3rd, and it's starring Sam Witwer, and it's a lot of the same teams from the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch, and Tales of series, anthology series, into this one. And recently, Sam Witwer, the guy who plays Darth Maul himself, did an interview with Star Wars Insider, and thanks to Holofiles, we got a little bit of that interview set up in an article for us to read. And I found what I read very fascinating, and talks about where we meet with Maul in this series, and how the series takes place a year after the events of the Clone Wars, where we last saw him in Siege of Mandalore. Sam starts out saying that Maul is confused and apprehensive of everything that's gone down with the Empire taking over the galaxy. And he's reassessing everything he's seen and what his thought process is at of the galaxy. The show opens up with him pulling the strings to try to build a new power base. He has ambitious plans, but he's struggling with if he's the puppet master or whether he's the guy who goes and takes care of things himself. He doesn't know how to delegate. And hearing this thought process is very fascinating of like, wow, Maul is still a bad guy, but he's not the Empire. And it feels like even though he was part of the plan to undermine the Republic and give roots to this new Empire, that now he's trying his best to be a delegation, and yet the guy who goes out with a saber with no questions asked and nobody in his path to stop him is struggling with that thing of like, how much of his lessons he learned from Sidious is he still adapting, or is he an organizer, or is he a facilitator? Is he someone who is a executor? No pun intended, but someone who goes and executes the plans of the organization. And another aspect that I really was taken aback of, like, wow, a lot of what's happened in the galaxy really shook him a bit, I think. And even with his dynamic with taking advice or listening to someone with a different point of view, which is where we meet up with his first lieutenant, Rook Kast. Now, for those who don't know, Rook Kast is a Mandalorian who served Maul when he was in charge of Mandalore itself before the war, or during the war, and was one of the main head honchos of his rule. And she first appeared, I believe, in the Son of Death from Your comic book series that was adapting storylines that the initial run of Clone Wars was going to do. But then once Dave Filoni's team came back on Disney Plus to conclude said show, she got a little bit of boost in the background stuff with Gar Saxon. And she's being played by Vanessa Marshall again, which is awesome to see her in this environment. And hearing this interview, hearing Sam say that Rook is his first lieutenant and that Maul is a fascinating relationship with her because he's actually listening to her advice. And because of what's happened, he's learned that people have a valuable point of view to take into consideration when he makes a next move. And that unlike his master, Palpatine, who always hated bad news, sometimes it's good to hear the bad news to assess and adjust, shift, and know what you're gonna do with your next move, whether it be versus your enemies or the environments that are around you. I like that aspect. The fact that Rook isn't just, yes sir, no master. It's just like, almost like a consigliere to Maul. And yet she has this militarized cadence vibe with her because she was a warrior. She was of Mandalore. She was part of Death Watch. So the fact that an old school member of Death Watch is now a potential consigliere to Maul, is very fast and dynamic. And I hope we get a lot of Rook Kast in this series. And again, going back to what we last saw him in the timeline-wise, which was the Siege of Mandalore, when he was initially captured by Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan, and then escaped, is that his encounter with Ahsoka also shook another aspect of him with his relationship with the Jedi. And Sam flat out says that everything he said in that encounter of, the Republic and that the Jedi's time is gone, is that he told her the truth. He worded it badly. The pitch was horrendous. And now, with his perspective on this galaxy, he's learned to use words, persuasion, and manipulation to get his goals across. And again, the angle he has with the Jedi, that he was trained to hate them at all costs and destroy them. But Sam has a great quote in this interview. Boy, we could sure use a Jedi Knight or two. At least with the Jedi, you knew where you stand. There's something to respect there. And I'm like, the guy who killed Qui-Gon Jinn, the guy who hunted and haunted Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars, killed his love, tried to take down the Empire with the help of a Jedi, potential Jedi, and now he really has, again, I don't even want to say compassion, but just a better understanding of an old enemy of his, and how time potentially changed him, and why he's seeking an apprentice right now from what we got out of that first teaser. I think he also went down to say that like even Dave Filoni pushed a lot of mandates when going into the series. And something that he took into consideration was that they approached the series with doing some actual live action capture for references for the animation. And he says, we tried things you wouldn't imagine, like shooting reference footage for emotional scenes. That way the animators can track how his eyes and expressions move at a scene. So I like that. I was wondering if they were ever going to tackle the potential notion of doing motion capture for a series. And granted, they can't just do a one-to-one thing, motion capture thing for the animation style that they're going for, but they would use that as reference, because I know they did that for the fight between Maul and Ahsoka. And so I was wondering if they would do that for a whole series of stories beyond just the cool fight scene. So I'm glad that they're trying this out in experimentation with it. One thing he said about Dave is that like he's been telling everybody, be better and push the limits when it comes to acting, writing, animation, storytelling, music. Just push the envelope. And the fact that Dave is encouraging that push, especially in animation and Lucas animation, which in my opinion, outside of Mandalorian, Andor, and Skeleton Crew, animation from Lucasfilm has been the gold standard of storytelling. We had Clone Wars, we had Rebels, we had Resistance, we had Bad Batch, we had the Tales series, anthology series. Let's keep pushing the envelope, and I respect that wholeheartedly. That's my report, if you will, on Maul Shadowlord. Again, this sort of stuff, I would run to a Barnes & Noble or a comic book store and be like, oh, I have a new magazine of interviews in anticipation to this series that I'm pumped to watch and cover for the channel. The fact that we're gonna tackle into Maul's point of view with the Jedi in this series, beyond him just trying to keep the mob mentality going and grow his organization. I love that this is what we could expect from the series. And beyond entertainment, I think this interview makes my anticipation for weekly streams that much more pumped and just giddy about it. So don't be surprised, y'all, come April 3rd and the following weeks of April 3rd that I'll be dropping reactions, shorts, and weekly streams covering this series until it concludes, which then we will follow up The Mandalorian and Grogu. But hopefully you enjoyed my video of Maul Shadowlord's update. I encourage everybody to go read the Holofiles article. I think it's based on Star Wars Insider, if you could find it. And get giddy of it. If you don't mind some of these little little details before the show, I encourage you to go read it. But until then, may the Force be with you. This is the way, and I have friends everywhere. Take care, everybody.